All right, welcome to EVE 2020. It is June 29th. We just got a big amount of news dropped on us. It looks like PvP arenas. We're going to read through this thing. Then we're going to have a open town hall reaction style discussion. So come join us Talking in Stations Discord if you're watching this live. Okay, I'd like to introduce Fonsway will do the reading, and then we have Vily and DTM and some other guys in here to talk about this afterwards. Go ahead.
Well, this is some very exciting stuff. I'm just going to try to burn down the dev blog really fast, and then I'll hand it over to the people who actually know things so that they can talk about it. So greetings, competitive capsuleers. Today's dev blog will dive into an exciting set of new PvP events that will be launching with EVE's third quadrant this July. Alongside their ongoing invasion of Empire space, the Triglavian Collective is also inviting capsuleers to prove themselves in all new proving grounds within the depths of Abyssal Dead Space. Unlike the old Abyssal Proving Grounds, which were accessible through a Triglavian gate at the end of some standard Abyssal PvE runs, these new proving grounds will become directly accessible via a new set of dedicated proving filaments that will be active during a series of limited time events. For the first time ever, the new Abyssal Proving Grounds will be accessible to small groups of capsuleers fighting against each other in a variety of ship types. In tradition of other recent additions to the game, such as Needlejack filaments, the new proving filaments are intended to provide players with another unique form of short session PvP that is full of variety and that complements the other PvP systems already available in the game. These proving grounds will allow players to face off against each other using their mastery of both piloting and theory crafting to overcome their opponents. They will also be able to track, compare, and boast of their prowess through leaderboards that will allow players to follow the action throughout each event. The original Abyssal Proving Grounds were introduced in the Onslaught release in late 2018 as an experimental addition to the popular Abyssal Dead Space content. Many players have enjoyed the old Proving Grounds over the past couple of years. However, we've been hearing a lot of similar feedback from active Abyssal PvPers, whether it was on social media or the forums, or when we've seen them in person at the player events like the EVE World Tour. This feedback has often included a few of the same concerns. Number one, many pilots want the ability to enter Proving Grounds directly instead of being required to complete an Abyssal Dead Space run first. While the combination of PvP and PvE can be interesting under the right circumstances, many of you have expressed that you want to be able to PvE when you feel like PvE and PvP when you feel like PvP. The current system requires you to go through one to get to the other, and that was an impediment to some players engaging with the content. Number two, we have also heard that the existing Abyssal Proving Grounds meta has been solved. After a year and a half of the same format, PvP in the Proving Grounds has become stale, and players have developed a handful of optimal fits that are repeatedly used, and the result has been the stifling of innovation and creative thinking. Over the first half of 2020, over 83% of the kills within the old Abyssal Proving Grounds were made by the same 5 ship types, and 48% of the kills were made by one single ship type, the Ikitersa. Number 3, we have also received quite a few requests from players who would like to compete in Proving Ground style PvP engagements with their friends rather than being restricted to 1v1 engagements. While the Abyssal Dead Space PvE content gives players the option to enter with a group of up to 3 frigates instead of a single cruiser, the old Proving Grounds PvP engagements have been limited to solo cruisers only. We all know that EVE is at its best when played with friends, and we completely agree with the players asking for the ability to compete alongside their friends in the Proving Grounds. Finally, we have heard from players that the system for finding opponents could do with some improvements. In the old system, the gate to the Proving Grounds would spawn when it detects that enough characters were active in the Abyss. Players could then choose to enter the Proving Grounds and might wait for significant periods of time for an opponent. It was even possible for them to win by default when no opponent could be found within the time limit. We really appreciate all the feedback about the old Proving Grounds that the community has passed along, and we are planning to address all of these issues with the new Abyssal Proving Grounds and Proving Filament system this July. Starting next month with the launch of EVE's third quadrant, the old Abyssal Proving Grounds feature will be replaced by a new set of limited time events where the Triglavians will invite capsuleers to enter the Proving Grounds to compete in a variety of formats. To enter the Proving Grounds, your fleet will activate a new Proving Filament, which will find your group a suitable set of opponents and then launch you directly into a pocket within Abyssal Dead Space for a fight to the death. The format for each Proving Grounds event in Q3 2020 will consist of a set of ship types that are able to use the filament to enter the Proving Grounds, as well as a specific fleet size of capsuleer participants. Over the course of the third quadrant, we are currently planning for 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 5v5, and 5-player free-for-all formats. We will be mixing and matching ship restrictions and fleet sizes, to ensure that each event provides players with a unique PvP experience and that the meta never grows stale. Each Proving Filament event will last for a limited time, generally either 3 days over a single weekend or 10 days across 2 weekends and the intervening week. The following events are work in progress and subject to change. July 16th through the 26th, 2v2 Tech 1 Combat Attack and Disruption Cruisers. July 31st through August 2nd, 5-player Destroyer Free-for-All. August 7th through 9th, Amar Foundation Day Special Format 3v3 Imperial Navy Slicers. We can also share our preliminary schedule for the rest of the Proving Ground events in Quadrant 3. The details of the formats for these events will be revealed nearer their dates. August 14th through the 23rd, August 28th through the 30th, September 4th through the 6th, September 11th through 20th, September 25th through 27th, and October 2nd through the 11th are events 4 through 9, the formats of which will be announced. We plan on adjusting our format plans based on community feedback from each event, and we'll be using these events to experiment with a wide variety of different format options to see how you will all enjoy them. Most events will focus on relatively inexpensive and accessible ships, so the widest variety of players can participate. However, we plan to have some special events with more flashy ships as well. In Quadrant 4 and beyond, we'll be continuing these events with the frequency of the events depending on how popular this version of the Proving Grounds proves to be within the EVE community. We will adjust the frequency of events to maximize the likelihood that players will be able to promptly find opponents when they compete during each event. The Proving Filaments. The new Proving Grounds matches will follow a simpler process than the old Proving Grounds mechanic. There will be a unique filament for each event. When activated, the filament will launch a Capsuleer and his fleet into the Proving Grounds just like an Abyssal filament launches a player into Abyssal Dead Space or a Needlejack filament launches a player into a random nullsec system. The filaments will be obtainable through several different methods, which may change over time and between different events, including as loot from Triglavian PvE content. We will be experimenting with a number of ways of distributing the filaments in the future, so the methods available for obtaining the filaments may change from event to event. The filaments can be sold on the market, so if you just want to focus on pure PvP, you'll be able to obtain them from there. Each filament will have a specific start and end date for the event, as well as information about the details of the Proving Ground match format for that event. The process of using one of the new Proving Filaments will be very similar to that of using a Needlejack filament. Your whole group will need to be in a fleet together and at a location away from stations, gates, and other obstacles. The player with the filament activates it, and their fleet will enter the queue for the Proving Grounds event. While the group is in the queue, they'll remain outside of Abyssal Dead Space and will be able to cancel their match and have their filament returned if they choose to do so. Once the Proving Grounds finds a random opposing team, both teams will be transported through the trace directly into the Abyssal Proving Grounds arena. The new Abyssal Proving Ground arena are a variety of visually stunning abyssal environments, including crystal rock formations that Abyss players will recognize in an all-new environment above a large hot asteroid. The Troglavians have also constructed a new set of structures around their Proving Grounds to better observe the Capsuleers who have come to prove themselves through ritual combat. New Proving Ground battles will last a maximum of 15 minutes, with the resistances of all ships being reduced around the 8-minute mark, just like in the old Proving Grounds. The combat field is contained within a bubble of safe space, and exiting the boundaries will result in progressive damage to your ship. The match ends when the only ships other than capsules left on the field belong to a single team of Capsuleers, or when the 15-minute match timer completes, whichever comes first. The winning team can choose whether to show mercy and allow the losing Capsuleers to escape with their pods, or whether to send them directly back to their home in a fresh clone. If the timer runs out before one team has succeeded, the bubble of safe space within the Abyss will collapse, destroying all the ships and capsules from every team and rendering the match a draw. Once the team has been crowned the winner, a Triglavian cache will explode within the arena, allowing the victors to collect their spoils. Loot that will often include Triglavian survey data and more filaments. An origin gate will also activate, allowing the surviving players to return back to the same location in normal space where their adventure began. Individual results in each limited time Proving Filament event can be tracked through a new window that will be accessible through a link in the Filament UI or directly through the Neocom menu. This window will allow players to view the format for the current event, track their wins, losses, and draws, as well as view a leaderboard displaying the top 100 Capsuleers by total number of wins in that particular event. At the end of each event, a set of prizes will be distributed to the accounts that reach this top 100 leaderboard, and then the leaderboard will reset for the next event. The rewards for reaching a leaderboard in an event in Quadrant 3 will include a set of unique ship skins. These skins will only be accessible by reaching the top 100 in one of the Proving Ground events during Quadrant 3 of 2020. This means that if you see one of these skins being sported in space, you can know you're looking at a top competitor in one of the Quadrant 3 2020 Proving Ground events. In addition to the unique skins that will be shared by all the Quadrant 3 events, there will also be specific rewards for those on the leaderboards of each event, and those rewards will change from event to event. These rewards are in addition to the loot from both the Triglavian cache and the wrecks of opposing ships that will be available to winners of each individual Proving Ground fight. We hope that many of you will enjoy these new Proving Ground filaments. these new proving filament events, and we strongly encourage interested players to give them a try and let us know what you think about them and what you'd like to see us add to them in the future. Just as the old Abyssal Proving Grounds and Needlejack filaments were built on the foundation of Abyssal Dead Space filaments, and as these new proving filaments are events built on the foundation of the old Abyssal Proving Grounds, we would love to see these proving filaments serve as a building block towards even greater things in the future. Your feedback is absolutely key to that progress, so keep talking to us digitally and eventually in person, and we'll do our best to incorporate your feedback into our future plans. Some of the future additions that we are especially interested in exploring are the addition of new forms of format restrictions, including restrictions on fitted modules and implants that would allow for an even greater variety in proving ground event formats. We are aware that any discussion of structured PvP will raise questions from the players who missed the old annual Alliance tournament event about whether this is intended to replace the AT. We want to make it clear that this feature is intended to stand separate from tournament gameplay and was primarily designed to replace the old Abyssal Proving Grounds. We know that there is an appetite among the community to see organized tournament gameplay return to EVE, and we have built this feature in a way that might potentially allow parts of its code to be useful for potential future work. That being said, we want to focus on making sure the new Abyssal Proving Grounds gets the attention it deserves, and we have the time to iterate on the feature based on the data and players' feedback before we start exploring the next exciting opportunity. In the meantime, if you're looking at organizing a tournament using the existing options on the Thunderdome server, please reach out to the community team by sending an email to communityteam@ccpgames.com. We will be opening the new Abyssal Proving Grounds for public testing on the Singularity test server tomorrow, and we hope that all interested players will try them out and let us know what you think. We will also be organizing a mass test soon to stress test the feature on Singularity. More information about dates and times for the mass test will be coming soon. A team of developers working on this new feature will be reading the forum feedback thread for this dev blog, as well as future feedback threads that we will be creating in the test server feedback section of the forums. Please feel free to let us know what you think. What about this feature excites you? What would make it even better? What formats would you like to see later in Quadrants 3 and 4? We look forward to chatting with you there. From all of us on the EVE dev team, thank you for reading today's dev blog, and best of luck in the Proving Grounds.
That's a lot of good, man. That's a lot of good in one blog post. There's a lot to be said about the community feedback on this, and I'm really excited to see what's coming up here in the future, especially among the format stuff. The biggest problem with Abyssal PvP for the longest time has been the fact that there's no community for it, or rather the community for it's really small. Huge minority in the player base, and that's strictly due to the fact that like you have to go through this huge PvE wall to get there. So people who would rather just undock and go PvP do that. And hopefully this alleviates some of that problem and kind of reinvigorates the Abyssal PvP scene. As well as I'm curious to see if this gets people more interested in tournaments and competitive situations, more generally speaking, because you're walking into like preset formats where you know sort of the limits of what people can fit, you know what you can fit, you know what you can do, and you can go in with a team of people who you've worked extensively with. So it seems like it might be one of these situations where this might actually not just invigorate one area of gameplay, but invigorate multiple areas of gameplay. It took a long time for us to get here. And if you look at like the leaderboards for in particular Abyssal PvP, it's really sad right now. I think like pretty much the top 50, there's really only 50 people who do it, and on a weekly or even monthly basis. As soon as you drop out of like the top 50 players, you're looking at people who have done this maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe even once. So I'm really curious, Vily, what do you think, dude? From the CSM perspective, from somebody who's probably had a little bit of a heads up, are you excited for the change?
Oh man, I'm so fucking pumped for this. Like, I've been like waiting for them to announce this. Like, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, oh yes, this is gonna be good. And obviously they've released, the first couple of formats that they're planning to try it with, and CCP in the last while has shown this willingness, this desire to test and try new things, and play with the game in ways that allow the players to get the things they want and try new things. It's just been great,
Mm-hmm.
and CCP put this together. They 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 really they just want to give people what they want to a degree, and I know the problems with the Abyssal Proving Grounds over the years, over the years, have
Year
been
and a half.
yeah, significant, right? Like, from the
Mhm.
fact that you have to basically do like a level 3 filament, which means that you basically have to be able to do some pretty significant uh, you have to have an active tank. You have to, it extremely limits what you can do it with. And obviously, it was cruisers, and it was cruiser 1v1s, and obviously the Ikitursa was by far the best ship without even anything else being close. Um, there was all kinds of problem with and now they're like, fuck that, let's do something new, let's do something awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think they're starting it with 2v2 cruisers, and that shit is like, I'm so hyped for that.
So
Like,
much fun. It's so much fun. We ran a 2v2 tournament. It's absolute blast. Another thing that's really good about this, Vily, I don't know if you've probably thought about this. But so like needlejack filaments are amazing because they lower your time to content as somebody who roams, right? As anybody who roams. This makes it even lower. And I'm super excited to see what ends up coming out of it.
well,
It's
yeah,
gonna
and
be
the biggest problem with the Abyssal Proving Grounds originally was like, because everybody was so pimped, and it was really awkward to do it. It, like, the amount of people willing to try it decreased, like, went through the floor, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's like, I don't want to go lose my 200 million or 500 million is Ikitursa against a guy who's got a 2 billion Ikitursa, because I have no chance in a 1v1. And like, in a 1v1, your fit matters so much, but in a 2v2,
Oh yeah.
everything's different, right? It's like, well, you just get two guys with like blaster vexors, and it's like, oh shit, can I tank this?
Mhm.
Nope, you're dead. It doesn't matter how pinched you are, right? And like, the dynamics of group combat versus like singular combat are so different, and
Mhm.
the way in which things can happen is so varied, even with such a small selection of ships, right? It just opens up all the doors for combat. And I think a lot of the big problems of the Abyssal Proving Grounds, where it was like, oh, I have to do this level 3 thing first, and then I got to go to the Abyssal Proving Grounds, and then I got to wait, and sometimes there's not even a proving conduit there, and then if I do wait there, then there's no guarantees anybody even takes it. It's like, anybody who's watched the Abyss Proving Ground, it's like, they get a fight sometimes, but it's not as near as often as you would like. And
It's a minority of the time for sure.
yeah,
It's a much you have to actually
I think,
play and plan to play in certain time zones if you're gonna do abyssal PvP.
yeah, the biggest issue was always, outside of the sheer cost, was if you were USTZ, you couldn't do the Abyss because people only ran it consistently between like 1500 and like 1800.
yeah, right.
So
So like, you're
if you
basically doing
wanted
this
to
level
do it
3 mission.
outside of that time zone, you were doing a level 3 abyssal site, and then you were going home.
Yeah, like, well, that's the problem, right? You were doing this level 3 mission, and there's no guarantee you even get like a combat site option, right? It was terrible in
Yeah,
that
well, and
regard.
that was the killer, right? Because in theory, right, if the combat gate had always been open, then you would have had something where there were people being like, I'm going to go into the combat gate, get that extra reward, and dip. And that would be like a
I don't
consistent
think
thing.
I don't think that's indicative
But like,
of
there
like
wasn't
of
even a
fixing.
gate in USTZ. So like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even get people doing that. So there wasn't even like a basic target for you to go after if you really wanted to. It just didn't exist
Well,
at all.
the PvE wall was definitely the bigger problem because it turned off so many PvPers from running these PvP sites. That's the huge problem, right? Like a lot of
Well,
dudes who
I
PvP
would
don't
disagree.
PvE. I don't they don't PvE except to fuel their PvP. And if you look at like the ISK per hour versus like living in maybe a wormhole or just idling a couple accounts in nullsec for the longest time, like it just wasn't really worth your time or energy versus going elsewhere and maybe making even more money. Um, that all kind of being said, I know a huge portion of the player base that would be interested in this kind of stuff. And now this opens it up to even, I would argue, like, so if you have a dedicated competitive player base who wants to do this, right, that's big enough to sort of sustain this, especially even if you just got more gates in EUTZ, right, more people playing in EUTZ, you're gonna have more like layman's coming and doing it, and then suddenly they're getting involved in PvP and enjoying it. It's such a good thing. I can't wait.
well, it's important to understand, like, the Abyssal Proving conduits as they are right now were also prohibitively expensive to
Oh,
participate in.
mm-hmm.
You're
Like,
not.
it's like, oh, I can do this in like a Gila. I think was like one of the cheapest ships you could basically do them in, because you have to do that level 3 PVE wall
Mm-hmm.
first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you're you're already so committed. It's like, well, you know, I'm 400 or 500 mil in, and then it's like, well, do I really want to risk my 400 or 500 mil ship? You know, when you know there's going to be like even a 600 mil Icky Terse is going to dumpster you most times, and like it just like it creates this cycle where people just get increasingly more expensive because they don't just want to like insta die to even a moderately prepped ship.
You would either had to run some like very specific cheese, either an Orthrus or
New cheese or
like
range cheese,
something
yeah.
like a Vigilant that had like a chance of kind of cheesing somebody who didn't know what they were doing or got caught, or you spent 2.5 bill minimum.
Yeah.
Well,
And
even then,
I
I wonder how engaging the fights were. Like I know Sniper Bros, and he's a good dude, and he's at the top of the board. And I wonder, like he must enjoy it to some regard. But I wonder how the quality of the fights were as compared to like any other time you get a 1v1 in Eve or any other time you engage with that content.
I
I'm
don't know, man. Like,
curious.
just think about it. Like, so you know, I'm sure he has like his nice high grade Esclap set. He's got his, you know, muted, you know, Icky that's
Oh,
like
dude, he's
full.
probably like a 6-7 bill icky easy. It's probably
I
not
think
very
it's
cheap.
closer to 10 or 15, right?
Okay,
So,
look, all right. Well, I don't know. I don't know that well.
well,
But yeah.
I mean, like realistically, right? Like just
Yeah.
taking a guess, you know,
Oh yeah.
the amount of fights he won versus the amount he got involved in, it's a safe bet that, you know, like there's only so much skill expression you can do in a 1v1 Icky Tersa battle, right? It's just not.
Well, even look at like the win rates. If you look at the leaderboards of Abyssal PvP, the people who are at the top have hugely swung win rates. And even amongst most competitive games, like a 60% win rate for like pro players is ridiculously high. Um
Yeah.
Once you get up to the top rungs. The fact that it's swung so heavy means there's external factors. And of course you just said it. It's like there's this ISK barrier to entry to get up there.
Well, and if you don't have a 90% plus win rate in the Abyss, doing it is a venture in losing money. Because even if you have a 75% win rate, if you're losing a 2.5 bill ship every fourth fight, you're not making enough money in the other 3 fights to pay for that 2.5 bill ship.
Oh, not even remotely close.
Yeah.
You need to win, in the case of somebody with a 2.5 bill ship, like 8 or 9 fights before you get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm doing pretty good here. Or in Sniper's case, you basically need to win every single fight.
Yeah, he's not died a lot. It's actually kind of ridiculous how little he's lost. He's almost won like 1,000 fights, right? And then he's only lost like what 60? It's ridiculousness.
Yep.
That's insane, man. And you'd love to say that it's just like time and effort and really good piloting, but there's just no way.
Well, like I haven't gone through his lost mills, but like I'm assuming like standard like high grade Asclepian set, you know, nice abyssal rolled like reppers and like standard like abyssal cap batteries, like all the things that, you know, actually make a difference. Like there's no
Mhm.
reason not to, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, and once you're at that point, then anybody that's challenging you basically has to invest 15 bill just to compete, or they go in with their 2.5 bill one, they die, you know, he makes 500 mil off you, and then rinse repeat.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's super interesting though to look at the metas they've picked too. Like they've picked some solid metas, and I can see inspiration from like previous tournaments, even going all the way back to Event in their tournaments here. And I think there's some of these are really solid picks. I'm most excited for the free for all though. That looks like a huge amount of fun.
Indeed, I would like to have a word a little bit. Can
Mhm.
I?
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Indeed, this new event, this new mechanics changes everything, because as it was in 1v1 in Abyssal Dead Space, once you reached the fitting meta, and once you practiced so much as to actually map your brain into having 99% efficiency in the commands you give to the ship. I mean, approach, lock, overheat, let it 3 reps, then stop overheat, then overheat again. You really I mean, there was not that much room for inventing. You either lost a fight because you're set to lose it, or you win it because you practiced so much and you perfected the fitting meta of the ship so much that you have 99% chance of winning. I think that's what happened to Sniper Bros. The fights he lost, he was set to lose because of the fitting of the ship. He didn't make bad decisions because he almost perfected 99% perfected his gameplay. Concerning these new mechanics, you really have to look at your opponent and make decisions during the fight. Do I attack the DPS ship? Do I attack the Logi? Do I attack the ship that is neuting me? You really have to take in-game decisions based on each and every single fight, and within the fight maybe change your decision.
Yeah, I kind of agree in some regards. I'm curious to see how things roll out. Like, Sniper Bros, even outside of Abyssal PvP, is a terrifying pilot to fly against. He's really good. Um, I wonder where the new metas will end up, and I wonder how often they're going to change these. If this is going to be event driven, kind of how it is now, or if they're just going to kind of leave it open and say, here are 3 filaments for 3 different metas. I
Well,
feel like
I
they'll
mean,
probably be switching them out, I'd hope, or something along those lines.
you can see right now what their initial plan is, right? So
Yeah.
that's in the dev blog, which is to do 3-day, 5-day, whatever,
Yeah.
with specific target goals. Uh, I think more than anything, CCP wants data. They want you to they want you guys to show with action what you guys really want. Like, I can't stress this enough. If you like this, if you do these things and you like them, speak the fuck up and do the things like you want to do, right? Because there's both words and action, right? And both of those things play a part. And it'll be very clear if day 2 of the first filament and there's like 3 people doing them and nobody else is doing them, that this is not what the community actually wants, despite what some people say, right? And the only feedback CCP gets that you know like the vocal feedback is one thing, but people doing things, that's real feedback too. And if people don't try it out, if people don't do it, then you know it wouldn't surprise me if they go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. I mean, so that's really important. Like, to the people who watch this, if this is something you're interested in, you got to make sure you're out there doing the events, at least the ones you enjoy, so that CCP. My cat is in. What do you want? Um, that you enjoy, so that they know which ones to keep and what to throw and what to pitch. Um,
Right, because like
uh,
for example, the 2v2 cruisers, maybe everybody loves that one, but the Imperial Navy Slicer one, maybe everybody hates that one. And I'm sure they'll be able to gather data and determine those things. But if the things you want to do, you don't do, then you're the person who's the problem here, trying to kind of, how do I put this? If you say you want to do something, go do it. Is what I'm trying to say.
do you call me the problem, Billy?
No,
I'm just joking.
but there is people like that who will publicly say, oh, this is great or this is bad, and then they'll say it's bad and then they'll go do it, or they'll say it's good and then not do it, right? And it causes this dissonance with CCP, and it makes it harder for them to make good decisions that the community
Oh yeah.
wants.
No, there's tons of examples of that. And voting with your time and energy, so to speak, is going to be huge here. And people being involved. I hope that this isn't just like I'm just excited for it and I'm going to go do it and then like nobody else does. I really hope that we see sort of a change here, and I hope CCP gets enough good data to continue forward with stuff. Gets the positive thumbs up, so to speak, from the player base.
Well, I can't really give them anything but props for the fact that they seem to actually listen to the player base this time around, right?
I think it's not just listening. There's clearly some thought and some things I heard outside of just like what players said and wanted. The way they're running these events and the way they have this sort of scheduled is a I don't want to call it like a stroke of genius, but it is a much better way to do it than just saying, hey, let's open up the abyss and just put filaments in to just bypass. Like this, you can tell that somebody was at the helm of this who didn't just listen, but like took parts from other parts of like took things from other parts of EVE and other events and definitely put some thought behind this beyond just opening it up and listening to player feedback. Like props to the developers like all across the board.
I think this is the culmination of the evolution of this game coming from long way back, long way back, even from its beginning. From a long time, since a long time, if you wanted to have a fight, example in nullsec or highsec, you didn't know what you get. You could engage someone in nullsec, and then 20 seconds after, or even 10 seconds, you can have a fleet on top of you. I mean, you wanted a 1 versus 1 or a 1 versus 2, but you ended up with a 1 versus 20. Same thing with highsec. You bait, and you want a 1 versus 1 or a 1 versus 2, and you end up with half a system on you. Regarding the last 2 years meta of the Abyssal Proving Ground, you always had a 1 versus 1, but CCP nailed it on the head when it said that the meta was stagnant. There was no element of surprise, meaning until Abyssal Dead Space Proving Grounds, there was there was the possibility of too big of a surprise, meaning 1 versus 10. Hello, can you hear me? Am I on?
You're coming through.
Okay, great. Regarding the Abyssal Dead Space starting 2 years ago, there was too little of an element of a surprise. The graph from this dev blog shows that there were only like 5 ships used, and the Ikitursa got almost 50% of the kills. This is a synergy of what happened in EVE from starting from the beginning, combined with the Abyssal Dead Space from 2 years ago. You also get the element of surprise, because you never know what the opposing fleet will be comprised of. It could be 100% DPS ships or 1 or 2 DPS ships helped by 1 or 2 or 3 logi ships, and you don't know how to prepare for that. 1 and 2, you have something established. You know you will get a maximum of 2, 3, or 5 ships. You won't have a surprise of having dreads dropped on you or ending up fighting 20 ships. I think it's a perfect balance of surprise versus boredom or meta, and it's a synergy of what happened in EVE in the last almost 20 years. That's my 2 cents.
I think that the point is clear from what DMT said, right? It's an example of CCP actually really doing something innovative with ideas and requests from the player base. I think that seems to be almost a new trend, and it's a bit, as I said, unnerving and scary that CCP is not only improving the game in general, they're also thinking outside the box and trying to come up with some really novel content. And it's just it feels like a completely new game. It's really taking leaps and bounds forward. I can only applaud this.
Matterall Stream is saying that everyone's coming through but you.
Yeah, it's me muted so that I didn't make a bunch of typing noise while I was sitting here listening. Thank you, though. Thank you. What I asked is this: do we like it? Do we not like it? Is this instanced PvP? Is it in the nature of EVE Online? I'm hearing a lot of, I guess.
There's a lot of complaints.
Positive.
There's a lot of complaints in chat from people who didn't read the dev blog and are saying things that aren't true. So I suggest everyone please read the dev blog.
It was a heck of a long dev blog. What's the TLDR of it for people that are just joining us?
TLDR is they're looking at a bunch of different metas. They're looking specifically at reducing the effort of entry and the cost of entry.
This is for PvP arena that happens in Abyssal Space.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be allowing groups of players to queue up together in different formats with different hull restrictions at the start, and they're looking into module and implant restrictions going forward to keep the cost down, keep it accessible, reduce the time to content, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Just to point something out that Seamaster would say that I always talk about the ecosystem, and an instance PvP feature in a game like EVE is still completely different than anything else because it all ties into everything else. So you can't say that it's just simple casual PvP because that's not it. It ties into everything else, and the fact that it's got a potential of becoming tools that are going to be utilized in a new AT tool, that's just mind-blowing. And if they manage to actually pull that off, I am going to be applauding like a crazy person.
Like a crazy person. Okay.
Because it's something that everyone said, it's dead. It's dead, Jim. Leave it. All right. Even the most positive EVE player said the AT is dead. Stop talking about it. Well,
no, there was a whole group of people that were like, "Please, please bring it back." It was
many said that many of the veterans said it's dead, Jim. But this is actually CCP saying no, it's not dead.
This is not the AT. A couple of skins for a 2v2 format is not the AT.
Doesn't matter. If you read the dev blog, CCP mentions the actual AT, that this is going to potentially be used in future iterations and remaking of the AT. So it's definitely AT relevant.
Yeah, smack in the middle of the dev blog, they say very specifically that this is intended not to replace the AT. This is intended to be the first step towards bringing back the AT. Like this is the code that they can use to make the AT something realistic and and sustainable in the future.
Indeed, regarding game mechanics, this is a big step forward in controlling future AT. I think that's right.
And I know that Vily said that we should not mention APIs, but since they're talking about actually making data utilized in some sort of leaderboards and stuff like that, which is most likely going to be some form of open endpoint for the player base as well. This got massive potential, right? Because the types of data that they're going to make available, how they're going to pull it, and all of that is completely open to new ways of thinking. And when you get this into the hands of players that actually want to use this to make tournaments, which is most likely going to be happening within a month or two after this tool actually launches. So if you don't think this is big, you've been living under a rock.
Okay. Dunk Dinkle is out there saying, just to be clear, this is not the AT. There are some aspects that might be used in other ways, but it is not the AT coming back. So don't take that as a promise.
I just pasted the section from the dev blog that addresses the Alliance tournament discussion.
But so this has got to have a lot of players excited, and other players, probably the ones that wouldn't bother participating in it anyway, kind of shaking their heads, I imagine.
Well, I think potentially this is more interesting than traditional AT, because this can give the player base something competition and sports like, where they just have to set it up. Like if you talk about the tournaments that the Imperium have been running, something using tools like this in the future, if the meta in there actually works, could be extremely interesting.
As long as the skins that our rewards are actually sellable and not like immediately unlocked on my character or something stupid, I'll be happy.
Which is that in the depth, I believe.
Let me turn you up. I'm going to turn you up, Vily.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear you there, Vily.
All right. Well, I'll just provide some pushback because I heard it was mostly positive. The guys we had discussing it in here. Let me think of some.
I mean, the standard complaint of instanced PvP is that it just takes more people out of the EVE world, right? Unless you can make the argument that the people who are doing it would not be playing EVE at all otherwise, the rest of the universe becomes somewhat emptier by their absence. So if you are just doing the typical roaming or whatever, and you show up in somebody's space and half their PvPers are off messing around in the abyss, you probably won't get a fight.
Well,
Yeah,
now
cannibalization, right? And the reality is that it's always going to be a worry, but it's important to understand that EVE has tons of unlockable potential in terms of the player base. That it, like, there's a lot of people that they may live in nullsec, they don't do anything all day, and you start giving them these opportunities, and you're going to see probably significant increases for some of those people. Would be my guess.
I think the filaments kind of showed that, right? The ability to get into battles faster, skirmishes faster, seemed to be rewarding for those players that were kind of gated from going around and shooting things when they had just a few minutes every now and then. This seems to me to be a very casual move, very, very clear move from CCP to retain casual players that just want to get on, have some fun, and get off.
Well, imagine a year and a half from now, they've developed this content, it's very mature, and they're able to bring back an actual Alliance tournament. And now all of a sudden we have all of these players who have been engaging in this style of combat for a year and a half, and are now not just watching the Alliance tournament from the sidelines, but have actually played that type of content and can identify with it even better.
Well, I'm just potentially seeing this being tied into something like the Hypernet, and then you basically get gambling back in tournaments. Just saying.
Do you like that direction, Caleb? I mean, this seems to me to be okay. Let's put those two things together, and you have sports and you have gambling inside of the universe. Yeah. That's very role play-ish, imaginary.
And but it's a legal way of doing it. It doesn't. It's not going to be something that. And it doesn't destroy the game. It's not outside in player-owned silos and stuff like that, which is open to abuse. It's all inside the client. It's all something that CCP can control and monitor. And it would actually potentially revitalize the at the moment, almost wasted dev hours on the Hypernet, right? I think Hypernet needs to be expanded and iterated on, and tying it into something like this would just be so interesting. I'm not going to call it DKP, but it is a bit like you could win points and positions when you are doing these filaments, right?
Well, here's the thing. Like, you and I are big pen and paper fans, although I haven't played pen and paper since I was 15 or whatever. But the idea of virtual world and leveraging real behavior into a virtual place with a global player base is really a great draw for EVE Online, at least for me and people like me. So in a certain sense, this plays against that, though, because you're turning this much more into a gamey video game, right? This is LOL. I mean, this is like those arena games. This is grab 3 of your buddies and form a unit and get in there and fight over and over and over again. Now, and here's where the crossroads is. It seems like when we wanted walking in stations, the idea is that, what everybody wanted was to be able to go and, I think it was to watch a stripper and to gamble. I mean, that was what everybody seemed to do it. Some people wanted court meetings, but most people wanted to gamble. They wanted a mini game in there or some bar to post up in or something. That was like the idea behind it. So this kind of feels like you are injecting sports to watch at a sports bar, for instance, if you can even watch this stuff.
Yeah, we basically just need the Galente to develop a special kind of filament that is used for tournament purposes. They've got the law stuff.
Yeah. It just seems like you put those two things together. Now, we're not saying that's going to happen. Right now, this is a totally separate thing, this arena PvP. I think it's a reconfiguration of something that wasn't working well enough. And so they wanted to fix it and maybe broaden it because there was maybe too much specialization in there. I mean, we got down to what, 4 players that were really good at arena PvP inside Abyssal Space, something like that. So kind of a closed feature. And I think a lot of work went into it. So why not open that up, broaden it up, and make that more accessible, as Vily was saying, with cheaper ships and less detrimental losses.
And because it's a new feature, right, there is so much potential to iterate in interesting directions. Someone is mentioning the whole loot stuff, right? And I've talked about the fact that they were doing experiments with the loot fairy mechanics a few months back, right? This is one of those places where you could actually do something like this. You could even do something completely crazy novel, like, say, destroyed items inside these are actually like redistributed back as loot in other instances, right? So you almost close the economic engine, and then you say, okay, it usually would drop the most valuable things and just destroy all the not valuable things. This type of thinking is something that CCP can definitely play with.
I get you. We're going to confuse people with what you're imagining and what's actually there. I don't want to do that. But suffice to say that the real thing here, and here's for me the real dividing point, where you have some people upset like Zia here, who says effing casual heads yet again somehow convinced the gaming company to boycott their path. And you have other people who are super in support of this sort of thing, like Major Silva there, the next Battle Royale. I think he's in support. But it sounds like this is this kind of hits that tender area of, is Eve a virtual world, or is Eve a video game that you can set up, reset, set up, reset, set up, reset?
Well, and I think the point is that if you can feed some would maybe call it casual PvPers into something like this, eventually they will be less risk averse, right? They will start thinking more about, well, we want to scale this up. We want bigger fights. We want bigger fights. And eventually that will lead to more motivation and incentive to actually do wars. Then they just have to actually also think about resources and strategy and geography and stuff like that, because you're not just fighting in a pit, right? And that's just, I think it's a little bit like a rail onto the real game that is Eve. And in my book, the only thing that is like the big thing in Eve is big wars, which is why I'm kind of hoping that this thing actually warms and ramps up.
Yeah, but could CCP just make it easier for new groups to get started instead of making it harder all the time?
Where do you see this fitting into that?
Oh, that was more general as Caleb. This thing is just fine. Let people have it, because we need more fun in Eve.
What about you, Dutch?
Well, one of the things is people are pretty well established. Like, try to get into nullsec, try to go into lowsec. People are so established that once you're trying to get in, you are going to get steamrolled so bad. Like the last time I went out for PvP, I took out a cruiser and I ended up being dunked by 10 cruisers, 5 battle cruisers, 3 battleships, and a carrier that all wanted to get in on the kill mail. So for people who want to get started on PvP that just don't have those numbers yet, this kind of content and this evolution of the Abyssal PvP is a really good thing, because all of a sudden things are narrowed down. Like, these are the max people I'll go up against, and I don't have to worry about being out-escalated. And if you have bigger numbers, you don't have to worry about effects dropping and keeping everybody else in the other team alive, and you just can't break that tank anymore. So from that point of view, this is an amazingly good step forward, where it's no longer about who has the biggest numbers, and you have an opportunity to level the playing field a lot better. Like, sure, people with ISK can get the more expensive modules to have that little stronger edge, but the playing field is much more fair.
Well, the thing is that if they continue down the path of the whole scarcity and bottlenecks and stuff like that, and meaningful value in the ecosystem and economy again, this could lead to my dream expansion or dream patch where they actually make it efficient or valuable to raise other people's farms and fields. This is basically the Viking patch, right? Where you've been practicing in the training grounds, right? You scale it up to like being able to do 25 versus 25, and then you can actually put 25 dudes in a boat or in a fleet and basically just go and be really disruptive, even to big guys, because you can do the hit and run, and the empire builders and the null entities will then have to figure out how do you do real defense and real defensive distribution instead of this whole umbrella bullshit.
You know, it feels like the race car drivers are going to have a great time, and everybody else is going to turn into a pit crew, building for their customized race or whatever. And is that a subculture of EVE Online, or is that the direction of the game? Like, that seems like a bigger question than just, is this going to be fun or is it going to work?
I think it's definitely going to be fun. I'm certainly have high hopes that it's going to work, because it levels the playing field. It gives people much better chances at getting started, learning the ropes, and not have to worry too much about okay, so I need to at least cover this, I need to at least cover that and that and that, and that's just one of the three people, and everybody else also have to do it. It creates the room for people to specialize, to say like, hey, okay, so you're going to be the Luchi to help the others up, you're going to go with E-War, you're going to be the DPS. Let's start working together, and we'll redefine and we'll readjust our fit and our tactics based on every experience we have with people we go up against. And with the new iteration where they say, okay, so we're going to limit access to these Tech 1 cruisers, that means that people that don't have all the Tech 2 ship skills yet also have a good chance at getting started without being 2 steps behind from the get-go.
That's a valid point. I think that's a really good, valid point. In the regions that I have my gameplay, I often see new players, and there are small groups, like 5, maximum 10 players, and they really want to get into PvP. They often get into nullsec ROMs, and they just get deleted. And they get deleted once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, and then they just give up, because they get deleted by big fleets or by very, very experienced players. If they will start like this, with 3 or 5 cruisers, they would get beaten the first time, the second time, and they would get a little bit better. They will kill an enemy ship, 2 enemy ships, 3 enemy ships, and they would see an advancement, a progression. And that is good feedback for new bros, for new players that enter the PvP arena.
Does anyone see unintended consequences, like maybe ganking actually becomes rarer because people have something to do?
No, ganking will always be there. That's really not going away. And there's always going to be people moving things, logistics, things that are, even if it's just for the guild mail or to send a message, suicide ganking is not going away. I think it's more an issue about having these different biomes, like you got high sec, low sec, null sec, wormhole space, abyssal space, and high sec is the starting ground. And in order to move from the high sec biome to any of the other biomes, you will have to deal with PvP, because at one point or the other, you're going to have to face it if you're moving out of high sec. And the gap to overcome in order to even get the slightest foot between the door, in order to open up pathway to low sec or other parts of the EVE Online universe, you have to get started somewhere. And if people are already in there and they're kicking your butt at the get-go, and not even in such a way you say, okay, if we get better, we have a chance. No, it's like, we cannot beat these numbers. We cannot beat these much bigger ship types, this much better technology. Like, there's no way for us to catch up. That just means that people at one point are going to say, you know what, this isn't what I'm looking for, I'm going to quit, or they are just never moving forward. And at one point, you're just starving the people that are looking for new PvP, like that they don't have anything else to go at. And because all the other groups that are active are already well established, nobody is really in a position to make the first move, because if you make the first move and you lose, you become the weakest or the smallest fish in the pond, and everybody else is going to pounce on you. So
you think it'll just it won't diminish other gameplays, it'll just be a different bubble of participation.
It's a bridge. It's a bridge to make it make the transition more doable. Because if you go in and you're like, okay, we've got 5 people, we saved up, we did our research, we need to get sorted here, and there's 15, 20, 25, 30 group people that are out there and that will pounce on you at the slightest opportunity they get, you're not going to stick around. So you're committed.
Here's the thing that I want to, again, push back on this concept or hit it again, which is the EVE Online, the nature of EVE Online. Wait, EVE Online, the nature of EVE Online, that kind of stuff. Because somebody said something here about this is just for people who don't want to play the boring travel game. It seems to me like if some people get to say, we're going to impose PvP on you at any time and any place, that the other side of the game can't say something like, well, we're going to impose travel on you, because that's a natural defense against PvP. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's an imposition of travel. This place has a time and space. This whole EVE Online has a ticking clock and has geography. And in order for you to get what you want, you have to suffer traveling. And in order for me to get what I want, I have to suffer risk of being destroyed while I do it. You guys see any equivalence there?
Well, this kind of splits certain pieces of content in two. So there have been a lot of comments of, EVE Online is about dominance and, space ownership and sovereignty. But then you have this other group of players who really just want a small fight. And they're the ones that have to roam around. They're the ones that have to look and potentially not find it and take time. And, there have been years worth of people complaining that they can't find their fights that allow them to practice and exhibit their piloting prowess and their fitting prowess. And it's just about owning space one way or the other. I think that this kind of takes those people out of that situation and gives them those fights that they're looking for, while not really taking away from the SOV game, because the SOV game really hasn't changed. So right, I think that's valuable.
I'm going to point out Guarov's the one that made the comment that I kind of piggybacked on. I didn't mean to quote him. That's why I didn't say his name. I just took what he had said and thought about it. The boring travel game being an imposition on people who just want to actually get into fights and stuff. But he writes back, Matterall is misunderstanding me. I'm not saying traveling is not a feature for those who defend their space, but not everyone wants to PvP. Not everybody who wants to PvP wants to do the travel. Thank you, Matterall. He said that.
That's one point. Another point, entirely unrelated. So this is the third instance of filament-based content that we have seen so far. First, there was Abyssal Dead Space, and then we saw Needlejacks. And both of those pieces of content came from the Signal Rise, CCP Signal, CCP Rise Dream Team. So I strongly, strongly suspect that while this dev blog doesn't have their name on it, that this is the team behind this as well.
Okay, here's the thing. I wish Vily was was listening. I wish he was listening, or any CSM member like Olmeca out there. I see Dunk Dinkle out there. I wonder how much of your fingerprints are on this, because I look at this as something that a PvP oriented CSM would bring you. They would agree with. They would back it. And I know they didn't ask for this necessarily. They may have had some influence saying, yeah, that is what we think EVE players would want to play. So yeah, go for it, CCP. Make this happen. My point is this another example of a casual EVE Online created by PvPers who just want to do fits and fight? And is this a setback for players that are trying to live in a virtual world with virtual pain and virtual toiling and virtual time sink and human hour gates? That basically means because we can't just do things instantly, we have to plan better, which is gameplay. We have to take evasive action, which is gameplay. And we have to be charismatic to hold our team together, which is gameplay. What I'm saying is, to me, it seems like the CSM would say, stamp this. This is good because players are going to fight and it's going to be more PvP, and that's what this game is all about. And I wonder if the virtual world takes a hit because of it. Nope. Okay. No takers? No pushback?
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
But looking more at Abyssal Space for what it was, like, it was an opportunity for people that were somewhat limited in the time that they could spend in one sitting. Like, you could have 3 hours, but only in like blocks of half an hour a day. So this is something that you can do and enjoy your time in EVE. And if you have more time, you can start to venture out in different things. Then to spice things up, you got the Abyssal PvP, where you had an opportunity to, if you, depending on what you were after, you had a tier 3 Abyssal, and if nobody showed up, you had access to tier 5 Abyssal loot, and you never knew what you were up against in PvP. Or you could say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with my PvE part, and I am guaranteed to do what I like in the time that I have available. For PvP, they are now introducing a same concept where if you are relatively limited in the time that you have, and you're not really looking forward to trying to get a fight and then be guaranteed to be outnumbered 10 or 15 to 1, where you do want to have a way to really test your skill in a one-on-one scenario, or 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, 5 free-for-all, and you're guaranteed that the playing... but if you got that... And
Dutch, why don't you just play the test center if that's what you want to do? If you really just want the excitement of the challenge of the fight, like, why wouldn't you just play on test center?
You mean on Singularity? Singularity is not guaranteed to be available or stable or up to date at any point in time.
Yeah, but it has the added value of everything being cheap, get into anything you want, and you can recycle over and over again. Like, if
right,
that's...
but Singularity is never the answer. It's always an additional thing that you can do. We cannot expect or rely on Singularity.
The reason I bring it up, Fonsway, is because if you want repetitive excitement that doesn't mean anything, do it on Test Center. But there's something about it being on Tranquility that makes it real and lasting and have consequence.
Well, that's the difference, because in the test server, all the ships, all the modules, and that's assuming that you have the luck that when you do it, it's up to date with your skills and you're not lagging behind a couple of months. It's 100 ISK, so people, and you can show up somewhere and you'll still get slam dunked without it meaning anything. In Tranquility, blowing things up, that has a meaning effect, because it has different prices, it's different things that might not be easy to replace, so you're having a more lasting impact. And you feel that it has a lasting impact. And at the same time, if you have this one thing that can reinvigorate your enjoyment in the time you play in EVE, you will start branching out to different things as well. So having more instant content to give people with limited time frames, limited abilities, still something to get in on what they enjoy, could be a really good way to keep them from playing Eve and start doing different things as well.
If I can chime in, I'd give an example as well.
Sure.
I just think it's kind of helps the mid-sized corp because throughout the entire past decade and a half, the mid-sized corp in Eve has just kind of gone away. So you see the player base grow and get older, and everyone gets kind of settled in their ways. And because of that, you see so many one-man corps. Just one guy and his 4 alts, or the 1,000-man corp, or the 400-man corp. There's no real in between for that, and because of that, if the one-man guy and his alts just want to go out and do something, even if it's just him and his buddy, they're just going to get steamrolled no matter what. So like this allows them to either log on, hey, I just logged on, it's me and my alts, but there's also my 3 friends in corp, and now we're actually allowed to do something without getting completely destroyed as soon as they step into low sec or null sec.
Yeah, the game is kind of all or nothing, right?
Yeah, and it's just like but it's unfortunate because that's just how the player base has grown up. Because everyone, has built up their castles, and because of
Miko,
that,
try to talk past your mic, not into it, and you'll get less of that wind noise.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's just kind of everyone's built up their castles, and because of that, no one really wants to put that much at risk. And even if you are just one guy in a group of friends, you have to put a substantial amount of risk up just to get a good fight in local, and this allows you to get that good fight.
Thanks, Torvald, for your raid there. We got 94 extra people. Thanks, Torvald. I'm sure they had a great discussion there about this new, what we are short coding as Arena PvP. We're talking about the merits of it and some of the philosophical underpinnings, but I think generally people like this thing. From the discussion we had, a lot of the PvPers like this thing. And Miko was just telling us that this is good for mid-size organizations where it's not essentially blue balls or Helldunk. In other words, all or nothing. Anybody else have an opinion about this thing?
Yeah, I think Torvald. He said if you need an extra voice to talk about it, he's in.
Sure.
So I asked him to join us.
They can give us a. Oh, and Torvald, obviously, for those that joined us, know, but the people that were here before, Torvald is an excellent PvPer in these abyssal PvP arenas. So it looks to me. Pretty much, if I'm looking at it with my game designer hat, that CCP doesn't want to give up on this work that they did for abyssal PvP 1-on-1 or 3-on-3, whatever it was. Hey, Torvald.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So it looks like they're just kind of broadening this out. What's your perspective on it, Torvald?
Dude, I've been screaming like a girl at this for the past little while. Just beyond excited, man. This is literally, and one of the things I've been talking about for the past year and a half or 2 years that abyssal PvP has been a thing. This is literally every bit of feedback from abyssal PvP is in this new feature.
Wow.
It's one of those.
To be clear, the screaming part is new. The girl part is usual.
Yeah. Okay, if that wasn't clear, yeah. But
so
everything.
That's an important
I've
point.
This,
yeah. I'm sorry, Torvald. I just want to set this up again because I think it's a very important point that CCP is listening to feedback. In fact, this dev blog, they went on for a few paragraphs on give us more feedback. And you're saying they've already listened and they're already fixing stuff that we were complaining about.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been known for this stuff for the past year and a half. This has been like my area, and I've been hearing a lot of feedback from people. And I was sitting there going through this new feature, and I was literally checking off the blocks. Like, all right, you guys address this issue, you address this issue. The amount of people who said they would do this content if this scenario or if that. And this is one of those things where they finally, like, this feature is literally all of it wrapped in one. And they say in their dev blog that it's a testing thing. They're not saying, hey, this is the new thing. This is what it is. suck it up. They're literally saying, hey, we're testing this out. We want to see what you guys think of it. And we even see they have the to be announced information because they don't know what format's going to be the best. They want to see what we come up with, what we do, what's the most dynamic, fun, what's the most active, kind of content. So they're literally opening this up for testing.
All right, everybody say hi to CCP Fozzie, who's in there. I think Goodfellas in the audience too.
Yeah, CCP's Fozzie. Fozzie, his team is behind this, so huge kudos to them.
Yeah, we have CCP Signal in the audience as well.
Oh, Signal too, good.
Signal's a damn legend, dude. That guy, another brain behind this Team Raw. They've a bunch of badasses, man. And me personally, huge thanks and love to them for what they've done, not only for me, but the entire community with this feature. But and one thing I would like to point out, if you guys didn't read down the article, I'm sure you already went through this, but at the very bottom, where they explain what their plans is with the future, they said the words Alliance Tournament. Okay, now they didn't promise it, but they said tournament. So I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, this is just,
Yeah, we addressed that earlier. So smack in the middle of the article, they say that this is not intended to replace the Alliance Tournament. This is intended to enable the return of the Alliance Tournament.
Yeah, exactly. They're opening this up for testing, and what we see happen with it down the road, there's so many different options. But I mean, we've seen recently on Twitch, the 5v5 scrims are very successful and very popular. And this is one of those things where it gives the opportunity for players to be able to dedicate more time to the actual content and the actual gameplay rather than the guys, Jeronyx and Casper and the amazing team that sets it up. This is literally, opening the doors of so many possibilities. And we don't know what the future of this is going to be. We have no idea where it's going to go. This is literally CCP saying, hey, we've gotten a lot of feedback. This is what we see. This is what people like. Let's test it out.
Joe, we were saying earlier, I think Vily was pointing it out, this seems to be making it possible for more people to participate in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like my personal experience, the other day I took out a low SP tune in the faction warfare, and I just wanted to screw around and have fun. And I got dumpstered 3 different times by some stupid situations that I put myself in. But, we always tell noobs, you want to learn PvP? Go to faction warfare, go around there where, that is good content. And there's great options there. But this style opens up a whole new realm. I mean, imagine some good PvPers out there taking a new bro under their wing and whatever the scenario is, whether it's 2v2 or free for all, however it works out, taking a new bro and doing that in a more kind of personal controlled environment. Yeah, man, it's a lot of teaching opportunities for there. And I honestly don't see I know people have talked about like ranked matchmaking or, there's going to be some overwhelming fits or overwhelming situations in those where it's just not fun or not exciting. And when you think about it, the first iteration of this on July 16th is going to be T1 cruisers, 2v2 T1 cruisers. And, you're still in space. You've got to be out there. You're going to be scannable. You're going to be detectable. So you're not going to see someone come out with a full officer rolled, thorax or something. I mean, I guess you could, but they're going to get dumpstered, whether it's in the arena by a counter or outside the arena. But yeah, it's just a lot of opportunity there for that.
The one big thing I just want to find out is whether the rewards from this are going to actually be transferable, right? Are those skins something I can sell on market? Or am I getting like a Vexer skin for my time that I truly do not care about?
So, oh man, those skins are so damn sexy. I'm just going to say that. Like, I'm going to be no-lifing that stuff for a couple days. But those skins...
Yeah, they showed some pictures in the blog.
Yeah, those skins look incredible.
Good.
But
they don't have lots of market value for me to sell them for money. But I play the game in potato mode. I could not care less what skin is on my ship.
I think the intended reward for this is the content. And like the money reward is going to be in the cash after every match and in the Rex after every match. Like that's going to be the money that you get out of this.
So it says in the dev blog, these skins will only be accessible by reaching the top 100 in the one of the Proving Ground events during Quadrant 3. So they're not going to be tradable. You're not going to get.
Oh no, the next line is actually more direct. It says if you see someone wearing this, you're looking at a winner.
Yeah, you're staring down a legend right there.
Is very disappointing.
Okay,
I mean,
I just want to point out CCP Fozzie's answering some questions in chat here, so I'll try to read one of these. He's talking to Sia, I think, and he says, one of the lessons from EVE's 17-year history is that adding variety to the game isn't zero-sum. The Abyss PvE didn't reduce the number of people running missions or anoms. Needlejacks taking people to nullsec didn't reduce faction war kills. It turns out that if you give players more variety, more of them will stick with EVE, and there'll be more players in the whole sandbox. So this is an additive feature.
Yeah, when you think about it, looking at it from a different perspective. So, a lot of the issues people bring up is something like this takes people out of space, or this will, make people roam less and whatnot. One of the things to think about is that this is a more instant content feature in the sense that, say you've got a person who's only got 30, 45 minutes to play EVE. That's not enough time to, you could, it depends on where you are and what's going on.
That dude wasn't roaming anyway.
Exactly.
In addition, this is entirely different gameplay from the Sovnol gameplay. It's a whole different game. This doesn't take away from that game. This is going to, and let's not ignore the fact that this is going to draw in players who weren't playing EVE. This is going to draw in players who used to play EVE and stopped.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Those guys who are activating those filaments to go into the arena, they're in space. They're vulnerable. So there's that option too. If you're roaming around, maybe you'll catch one of them. If they're in high sec and you really say you're really mad at people doing this content and you want to stop them because you think this content's bad, go in high sec and gank them,
Will we be able to spectate at all? There was a question about that earlier.
Why do people keep asking about this? It's called streaming. You just get the
yeah, right? Yeah, now instead of having
touche.
Until now you have two people in a fight. Maybe one of them was streaming a fight, maybe. Now you have 10 people in a fight. How many streams are you going to be able to watch now?
So CCP Aurora answers, spectating will not be available at launch for this.
Yeah, they're this is the very beginning of it. Like they said in the blog, it's, they're testing it out. They're going to see what it's going to, they're going to see what's going to happen in the future with it. It's literally just this is going to be awesome streaming content. And, we've got these set events, but player ran tournaments over weekends, depending on how, you've seen throughout Abyssal PvP and then what Jeronyx in chat, he's the 5v5 dude. You see what they've done, what players have been able to organize. Even though this is less controlled in the sense that it's random, there's still the options for people to run tournaments in a way,
Yeah. Well, listen, the whole thing about streaming and streaming it, good answer, Caleb. I would say this, though. If you could see this inside of a station and tune in, that would be awesome.
See it in talking in stations, using the video feature where everyone can just add their stream to the video feed. Of course, we would definitely need Discord to actually then boost our server a little bit, because if suddenly it's a 5v5 where everyone is sending their stream, that's a lot of traffic. But still, it is definitely the direction and the possibility that we should look at, because then you basically get the cockpit view from every single participant, and you've basically got the first steps of completely new and novel esports.
Yeah, and I love the idea of being able to bet through HyperNet on it. And I think those two things combined actually create a gestalt or they take it to a different level.
It's the first small steps, and the fact that this is new means that it can really be iterated on. And the more degrees of freedom and the more is handed over almost to the players, right? The more likely it is that these things are going to work. And as I've said before, one of the things that I think that they should do when they do these things is then use it to experiment with something like the loot fairy, because the discussion of whether or not PvP is a viable lifestyle and how loot drops are handled and how they could be integrated into the whole dynamic ecosystem redistribution mechanics, there's just so much potential in using this in an awesome way. And revitalizing HyperNet is just one of them, because HyperNet would be cool again.
This is what, okay, I have an agenda. The agenda is always to put more imagination into EVE Online. That sounds really stupid, right? Because there's a ton of imagination in there. But I have been blown away by some of the development that they've done, especially the moon stuff was amazing. But when you put in a feature like this, it feels like fan service and placating. So when I start to think of it in terms of, oh, we have sports in the game. Oh, you can see it on screen in the station. Oh, you can bet on it. Now it starts to feel like part of an ecosystem that has life. And that's different than just placating fans that do a certain thing.
Yeah, that was, I mean, think back to the Alliance tournament, how popular the bettings was, like bettings outside of, through websites and whatnot. I forget, I think Eve Bet, right? That was the one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and remember how much value was in the AT, right? Not just from the stuff that we got from CCP, but also the value invested in training and in participating and in the ships and buying the former AT ships that had actually been granted. It's like there was so much economy in that, and that's why, as long as this is completely tied back into the EVE ecosystem, then, as I say, you can't compare it with any other instance PvP game out there, because everything is made from titanium. That means that everything you put into these things is going to affect every other player in EVE.
Yeah, but the AT started to, from my perspective, started to lose its connection to the game, and you had, again, race car drivers and pit crews, and that was it. When the players didn't identify with the teams, there was a break in the interest, I think. You can have gladiator games, and if you're going to have a tournament, then your champions really have to connect to those champions. They have to be your champions. Wear your colors or whatever.
I think the problem was that, if I'm not entirely wrong, is that it actually escalated too much into Formula One area, right? The value and the investment required to take part in the official AT just ended up being too high. It was like complete Super League, and there was no granularity. If you couldn't invest the time, and if you couldn't get the tools and all of that stuff, you might as well not even try, right? And this feature brings back a lot more opportunities for other leagues, so middle range leagues, and the granularity that was missing, right? This could actually bring that around, and then you could still have the official annual Super League thing that everyone else would like earn points to actually take part in. So instead of you paying with just Plex to actually be in the AT, you would be required to have a certain level of activity in these things to even get in there, right? Yeah. Then you have a completely new game where it's all the superstars, and you've already followed them in their own little Rumble matches and in their own little league competitions. And then once a year, there's going to be the big AT where it's all the superstar teams, and everyone is now famous. This is back to what I said about the AT. Personalities were not in the front enough. But if you can do something like use Discord, where you can have the video feed of the actual person on cam and his cockpit view, and all of these things become possible. I'm not saying
yeah, that's pretty cool. Let me interrupt because I got to break you guys up.
We have two people in chat that I actually want to hear from specifically. We have Jeronyx, who just joined, and we have Killabee, and I think that both of them may have some interesting comments to make.
Hello. What's the topic?
Yeah, man, you can't just transition like that. You got to prep them. Here, let me. I wanted to first, Caleb. I cut you off for a reason, and that was to say, you and I are very excited about this for different aspects. I think there can be something here if it evolves in the way that it could possibly, because then it gets into a more expansive participation. You don't have to be good to participate. You don't have to do it even to participate, but you can think about it. And if you can think about it, you can play it all the time without having to sit at your computer and do it. Well, but really, hold on, before we go on, I do want to get Torvald back in here, and I guess Jeronyx, and I'll catch Killabee up on what we're talking about so he can participate too. But Torvald, you wiped the tears out of your eyes, and
Sorry, I'm still happy dancing right now.
Tears of joy are they still flowing?
Yeah, man, I've been watching what Jeronyx has done, what his team has done with the 5v5 scrims, and what we're seeing with this new content come out. And then hearing, we see in the dev blog, they literally say Alliance tournament, and it's not going to replace it, or that's not what the intended feature is. But we've already seen with the Needlejack filaments, and they've made the reference to those. They do the special filaments, the 25-man filaments, where they're special events. So, who's to say that we can't, if this feature is popular enough, who's to say they won't let out, special event filaments? Maybe this becomes a permanent feature, and we, depending on what the dynamic of the meta is. And then, once a year or once a quarter or something, they do the, we have a tournament style thing. I mean, like I said, nothing's off the table for them, as they said. They're looking at it, but yeah, they're telling us like, hey, we're trying to do this. We're trying to give y'all what you want. We're looking at different options and possibilities and whatnot. And then, as Aurora said in chat, like, spectatorship, they're building off of this. This is this brings the whole competitive edge to EVE. Esports is a huge thing. And, just bringing that idea, the Alliance tournament, many of us remember that. And there's just so many options there. And the big thing is just, there's going to be negative, shitty people out there who are going to, they probably don't even play the game, but they're going to whine about this feature anyway. But you just got to do the feature, try it out, enjoy it. If it's more fun, then hell yeah, man.
Just count how many times in the dev blog they say, we listened, we're continuing to listen, please give us your feedback.
Exactly. I cannot stress that enough. They've literally heard every issue with Abyssal PvP. And this feature knocks all of that off the map. I mean, Team Raw, man, CSP Fozzy, Signal, Deadlift, their team has killed it with this. It's literally like they have been paying attention and listening. It's like, all right, let's do this and open up the door for this.
I like that. It's literally like they've been listening.
Yeah, man. There's still going to be people whining about it. There's going, people are going to be talking about killing roaming or whatnot. There's going to be that. But man, everyone needs to just try this. We're getting, testing tomorrow, and then it goes live on July 16th. Like,
that's fast.
Yeah, that's really fast. I mean, that's insane to think, how quickly it can move. But like I said, you can't knock it till you try it. And it gives you, if you've ever been in a small gang fleet and you've been dunked on by a bunch of dreadnoughts or any shit like that, this is finally your chance to get that small gang. Like, I know it's not in the sandbox, but you're still in the sandbox outside. But yeah, it's just, I can't stress enough, man. People just need to do it, try it, give feedback, because they're freaking listening, man. They're listening.
So, Jeronyx, do you have impressions on this yet? Have you read it?
Yeah, it's super good. I mean, like, there's a couple of things I want to address that keep coming up. So, the first thing about it killing roaming, right? Like, when we roam, so I fly with Goran Clade, right? When we roam, I don't know about you, but in this format, I don't see the chance to kill some renters raw, qual, or super because they warp it in and think it's a good idea. It's a completely different thing. It's not roaming, right? It doesn't conflict with that from my perspective, right? But this format, and I said it in chat, and I said it to a couple of people now, it's like people are trying to big brain it for the future. But what you've got here, and it's in its rawest form, and which is the best thing about it, is it gives easy access to the entire player base to competitive EVE play. And the only time we've had that before in an official CCP sense in the mainstream was the AT. And the AT had massive barriers in place, and now there isn't. This is going to be CCP's a tool overall to see, and for players, do players want competitive EVE? And for EVE players, can I do it? Do I want to do it? Do I enjoy it? And I think this is going to be the tool that's used to measure what the interest is, and they'll take it from there. I think it's a great thing to do. We've been doing the 5v5s, and we say it's super accessible, but there are still barriers in place for it. But this is a great thing. This is super cool.
Can I just defend myself?
No, I'm going to defend myself. I'll defend you too. The big brain part of it is that this is cool for you, but this actually takes away from the imagination of a game that is continuous, because you have an instance of you separating yourself and jumping into an arena. So my question is, do you feel like there's a conflict?
The AT?
The AT was separate from the game.
But you
and
guys
that's
don't
why
have a problem with that.
Yeah, I did, and that's probably why it died. Not because I had a problem with it, but because it was losing fans. But I'm wondering if you see that as any kind of a conflict, because what we were trying to do there was to say, look, there is a way to think about this and use it in a way that does include people who don't even participate in it, which makes it part of a virtual world, which then includes it in gameplay for not only the people who participate in it, but people who want to observe and know about it.
Can I say something in my defense for being called Big Head? Everything I mentioned is potentially technically feasible right now. Maybe not on a 5-to-5 scale, but on a 2 versus 2 scale, it's definitely all possible, because this is just a matter of whether or not the endpoints on API calls are also going to be there. Then the players can actually, as third-party tools, develop these things all by themselves, and they can do the streaming. And hell, you can even have Matterall doing the commenting, which would be hilarious, just to read the names.
That'd be terrible.
The point is that it's not that big brain thinking. It's not that far out in the future. It is almost ready.
But I think the point he was making, though, that Jeronyx was making was, let me just tell you what's here instead of what you're going to play with in your imagination. He's saying, this is what it is. And I think that's what he was trying to say.
Yeah,
I'd
like to ask Jeronyx, actually. So with what you guys do and the content you put out, when you're looking at this new stuff, what do you think you and your team who have been putting out 5v5 scrims, how do you see this? What are you going to do with it when it first comes out? Are you going to try and...
Oh, we're going to test the shit out of it, dude. We're going to be all over this.
I did the Abyssal PvP tournament a couple months back, and now I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, there's like, I know where, we got to enjoy it for what it is, but man, I'm already thinking like, all right, how could we do this? I know, your team and the shit you guys do, you got to be all over this, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, like, yeah, we are, but there's reservations I have about this, like the original 1v1 thing, right? And I think, Matroy, you said it earlier. If you look at the Abyssal PvP, right, the 1v1s at the minute, it's got the same. It's a microcosm of the AT in a very loose sense, right? The AT is the same teams doing the same thing, always getting into the final. Abyssal PvP is the same 3 or 4 people always dominating it. It needs something which is a bit more open. And I agree. What I'm saying to you guys, right, in terms of the big brain stuff, is what I'm saying to you is I'm not really concerned about the stuff in the future. What I'm concerned is that CCP and players have now got a tool, a metric, a function, a format to gauge interest. It is probably the most accessible it's going to be, and we can now kind of settle the argument, if you will. Is there actually an interest in it, or is there actually a player base for them to do something with? Betting, I'm neither here nor there on it, but I see what you mean. Can it be spectated? Is there going to be some actual pushback into TQ? I don't know. At the end of every season, if you will, does somebody get their name plastered on the side of G244 or something like that? And yeah, I do think there should be something like that. It shouldn't be completely abstract and separate to the game, but I still think that functionality should be there. And I think now they've got it, only good things can come from it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that this is a way for them to gauge interest and build towards something. If the interest is there, that's a really good, for the development of the game and the use of time for developers, that's a really good benefit.
But let's take an example of what the in-game screens used to be used for with bounties, right? Which is completely waste of time, because no one cared about that, right? But if it was something like this that was tied into the things that you could see on billboards or on actual structures, who actually just won something, and what team had won against what other team, and who was on top of the leaderboards. So all of these things could be fed into it. And in my opinion, I don't even think it's that complicated developer time-wise, because if the data is already reachable as an endpoint in the API, feeding it back into the actual client should be simple.
Agreed.
By the way, CCP Fozzie says, we're intentionally sticking to relatively cheap ships for the first several events to keep it as accessible as possible.
That's how it should be.
That's what they said in the blog, too. And they also, I'll repeat again, they said they're looking at module restrictions and implant restrictions for the future.
Man, I tell you what, even if they did not do any kind of restrictions, the minute you're able to see some blingy, crazy shit out there, you're going to have, I mean, whether whoever that person is, wherever they're running, they are going to be in space to activate these filaments waiting for a cue. So if you have that knowledge and that intel that person, say I'm the guy flying around a full, yeah, IPEX said 6 bill thorax incoming. If I'm that guy doing that, use a locator agent, come find my ass and gank me, because that is awesome. And that's what that's for. That
the person flying that ship should know. Yeah.
And this is the first thing that's going to happen when this launches, is that the kill boards will have a dedicated page only to these things if the endpoint is there, right? And CCP will pretty much be able to do something similar and feed some of that data back into the actual game client. I don't see this not happening. It's going to happen because it is a lot more interesting than the current C-kill boards, right? Because C-kill is only relevant for basically just following somewhat the activity level in EVE. But if it's an actual leaderboard that you can't really game because it's always something that you are dedicating into these arena fights, that's something that I would be watching every fucking day because it's a lot more entertaining.
Could we invest in pilots like?
Well, that's what you could, right? You could get teams that would sponsor these things and would help to actually source the materials for it. Again, as I said, the granularity that was missing from the AT could actually enter the game with this. If CCP really doubles down and puts in the effort to make this a reality, it could be massively popular. And as I said, I know it kind of takes a little bit away from the strategic sandbox war game stuff, but it's going to be something that cross-pollinates, right? The people that are into this are going to be interested in the bigger fights.
Okay, all right.
Who paid for?
Don't make all your points at once.
No. Who paid for World War B? Who paid for it?
Wasn't me.
That was Matrol, I think.
It was fucking gambling.
I gotta get going, dudes. Thank you for having me on. I just want to say
thanks.
Tomorrow, test it, guys. Test it, enjoy it, love it. Thank you guys for having me on, and I'll catch y'all later.
We'll watch your stream for this. All right.
It was illegal RMT or scale up.
Dirty RMT money. No, it was gambling money. It was dirty gambling money.
Was not RMT money. Was gambling, yes, but not RMT.
Here's an idea for you.
That's what Mason said in a fireside. I believe him.
Well, the RMT snuck in there somehow. It's like, why not? So there's no proof they were RMTing. Yeah, they had. We'll go back later about that.
You want ships on the line, right, Matra? You want to involve a gambling aspect. What about this in terms of a hypernet, right? You put a hypernet out, okay, and teams have to, I don't know, forego something. They have to, I don't know, each team has to bet a marauder, just for example, and the winner gets both. You know, teams have to bet. You know, potentially opens avenues of other
skin
bullshit,
in the game.
But.
Yeah, we were kicking that around earlier. It was like combine hypernet with this, and you start to build like, you know, what people wanted with walking in stations where they could go to a little gambling thing and be in a bar and watch, you know, sports or whatever. It gets interesting, you know. One of the problems that I've seen from my perspective, always my perspective, is that I couldn't relate to what you guys were doing. And at a certain point, you guys, the AT players, became so good that it became a different language. And I started to feel like, well, I can't participate in the ingenuity and the technique and the strategy. I could always participate in the loyalty. So at least I could cheer for my team.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I'm surrounded by those players at the minute, dude, and I haven't got a fucking clue what they're talking about when they're theory crafting. But I know what you mean. No, because it's all about finding someone to follow and a team to follow. I get what you mean, and we're trying to do that at the minute. You know, when we started the 5v5 league, right, we had the same challenge. We said, you know, we want to give teams the option to rebrand because they came in with, like, Volta came in as RNG. The team that Vily's on, which is, I think, all test pilots, are in Goblin. So, you know, you don't get that engagement or involvement because, like, who are these people? And I think that's something that would be good for this long term, is that, you know, can, you know, A, player profiles, B, team profiles, get the sport in the game lore. Like, look, like the new Eden Open kind of did it almost, you know.
Mm-hmm. And these 5v5 strategy setup that you do is really interesting. It's its own mini game, and it's very it's almost like a card game, right? Like you're trying to predict what the other person has and is going to use, and then you try to make the best hand you can with a deck, so it's got kind of a card game quality to it.
Yeah, and if you're talking about card games, right, and something like Magic the Gathering, where you bet one of the cards that you randomly pull from the deck, this brings on the whole thing of why the loot fairy is something that they should really consider, and the whole loot mechanic should be reconsidered when we're talking about this, right? Because everyone is now talking about abusing things like implants, and you should be able to have rules. Well, how about making a rule that says that in these things, implants and rigs actually drop, right? Completely flipping the rules on its head, because then it's not really abusive to bring these things, because you put that skin in the game.
All right.
Nice.
You still reading, Killer?
Well, no, I didn't want to read the whole thing, so
It's
I had
long.
somebody in my corp TLDR it for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm in the picture.
So just with the brief knowledge that you have, what do you think?
Well, so I particularly don't really care, right? Because I am about to fight a war. I don't really have time for this. But I talked to some of the people in my corp who are participating in the 5v5 tournament as well. In fact, they are part of there's two sides in your tournament, right? There's like the Jovian and the Drifter, and they're number one in the Drifter. It's Ajax and Jose and Bab and those people. They played yesterday against Volta and smashed them, so it was great. And they like it, right? So clearly, that's a good thing, because those are all ex-AT players, and they like this feature. They're really excited about this, which means that it clearly is it's a nice feature. And that's actually, me personally, I'm not the kind of guy that does like 5v5 and that stuff, which is why I say I don't care. But that makes me sound like a dick sometimes too. I do think it's a nice feature. I don't mind it. I think it's great for the people that do want to play that kind of content. They have that available to them now, right? In a better way than just trying to fight a 5v5 out there somewhere in space, which is basically impossible. So yeah, it looks cool. I have no objections against it personally.
Yeah, you're not coming off as a dick. Like, just because an individual, like, you recognize the value despite the fact that you personally aren't going to engage.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I'm probably not going to use it when it comes out because I'm going to be busy doing other stuff. But eventually, I'll probably poke my head into it. I'll ask Nidus or Ajax, whatever you call them, and I'll ask Jose, "Oh, you guys want to do like a 3v3 filament or whatever?" And then we jump in, have some fun. That sounds like a thing you could do when you're really bored and there's nothing going on. You can just hop in, have some fun. Sounds great. I don't know.
It's great for the casual player.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you've only got an hour to play. Take any player in the game anywhere. Like, what, you live in Talma? Do you go sit on the gate for an hour? You're a wormholer? Do you roll for an hour? You're a nullsec pilot? Do you go see if anyone's in the area? You got no. On dock, grab filament, 2 friends, go. Like, so cool.
Well, one of the byproducts, I think Killer B mentioned this, was that, or actually Jeronyx did too, that when you had the Alliance tournament, one of the cool things about that is you kind of had Alliance tournament players around in EVE Online. They were logging in more regularly and stuff. So there was the potential for them to get involved in something too. And when the AT went away, there became really no reason for them to log in and to be around by chance if something was going on.
Yeah. That's right.
That's
Hey, G-Pilots, let me I want to say something, but I have food, so let me just chew that, and then I'll say something about that.
We'll reserve this space.
Let me jump in his statement before he does. But the prime example, and Killer B might be able to give this more accurately, but the guys on that team, the Zero Talent team, so Ajax, Jose, they weren't really playing the game until we announced we were doing the 5v5 thing, same as a bunch of other players. They just weren't playing on TQ, but they resubbed and logged back in to come and play in this tournament. So, it's not, I wouldn't say, it's like, what, I don't know, 30, 40 people, but there's definitely a want there from people to do something competitive in the game.
Yeah, I think what we covered earlier, like, there's going to be resubscriptions and new subscriptions that didn't exist before. So, like, talking about this taking away from other gameplay is kind of silly. I think that anything that this takes away, which I don't think it will, is going to be dwarfed by what it adds.
So first of all, both Jose and Ajax have been playing, because Ajax is also Nidisbar, who also killed GOTG and Sword Dragons Alliance. So he's still very much active on TQ, but he's
Casual
one
flex.
of the few. Yeah, I'm just saying he's not just an AT player. He does also smash stuff on TQ, but he there's certainly, for example, Bab, who's also part of that team. He's a good example of that kind of person that doesn't really play on TQ. He's only really been around for the AT, and now he's playing in your 5v5 tournament, right? So that's really great, because now he's actually playing the game again. But what I was going to say is also that, as Matterall said, they're around in the game, the AT players. In fact, they play a very crucial role. Like, I know when there's like tasks that I know require good piloting in a big 0-0 fleet. For example, one of the best examples is firewalling. So when you try to protect your own fleet from an enemy fleet that uses missiles as a weapon platform, you can negate most of the missile damage by positioning 2 smart bomb battleships between the enemy fleet and your fleet, and the smart bombs will actually kill the missiles as they travel. So almost none, like, you can basically at least negate 50%, sometimes even more. If you do it right, you can negate up to 80% of the damage of the missile fleet comms in large scale. But obviously, every decent fleet commander that pilots the missile fleet is just going to primary that battleship, right? And that requires some really good piloting, because then when the one battleship realizes he's being primaried, he has to fly behind the other smart bombing battleship. And those are the kind of tasks that basically nobody but AT pilots can perform. So actually, in like really big fleets that we did have on TQ, when I know, okay, Ose is around and Nidus is around, then I ask them, hey, can you guys do the firewalling? Because I know they have the skills to actually pull off the piloting that's required to make it work, right? So that's why AT pilots are really valuable in big 0-0 fleets as well, because they can provide you, you have like a little pool of very skilled pilots that you can assign special tasks to. So that's really cool.
And not every single pilot in those large fleets needs to be able to do anything, but having a few of those is exceedingly valuable, and I feel like this content is going to build more of those pilots.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. You give people the format to actually understand, I wouldn't say the niches of the game, but get to know the game on a more granular level and know their ship better, if you will, rather than being a number in a fleet, which isn't always the case for most people. But it gives people a chance to play a role, whereas some days they might not. Because I guarantee you, in these formats, there's going to be no fillers. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be no +N+1s in these arenas. Everyone's going to have a role to play.
All right. Excellent. Any more thoughts on this? Either Killer Bee, Jeronyx, or anyone else?
Well, I feel like this is kind of just an extension of what we've been seeing with Abyssal Dead Space and other instance content. So when Abyssal Dead Space was introduced, especially when the frigate Abyssal Dead Space was introduced, that started building better pilots from the get-go. Abyss is extremely unforgiving, and it kills people left and right. It's unlike any other PvE content ever seen before, and I feel like this is kind of a natural progression from that.
Well, cool. Looks like a lot of excitement around it. I didn't see much negative. That's why I was pushing back and stuff. I did want to tackle some of the more theoretical issues, because really, that's all I got. I can't really talk about how great this is from the perspective of a user like a Jeronyx can, or a Torvald can, or even a DTM or Vily. But I'm glad that we got all those points of view in on this hour and 45-minute program that people can listen to. Consider what CCP has put here. It's a big, big deal. Game changer. We had Fozzie in here with Aurora. Signal was in here as well. I think Goodfellow was watching. They're all looking for your feedback. They're looking to see what you guys talk about in chat. Looking to see what you guys talk about on Discord for Talking in Stations. They want feedback because clearly they listen to feedback, since, as Torvald was saying, this is a feedback-heavy package for Abyssal PvP. And now it's open to a lot more people.
I'd like to just take a moment again to give props to the team behind this. Fozzie and his guys. CCP Signal is the guy writing all the code, and like I'm sure that they have been working hard on this and have been very excited about this and have put a lot of attention and care into this work.
Yeah, so thanks to them. Thanks to you guys for showing up. Really appreciate Francois, you reading the whole thing. I didn't realize it was so long. Good job getting through that. And thanks for watching. So we're gonna call it quits for now. We're gonna continue the discussion on Talking in Station's Discord and the Eve chat channel. Again, give CCP your thoughts on this. Experiment with it while it's on the test server, and then play the hell out of it when it comes out. This thing has incredible potential on different levels. So this is a really interesting time to play EVE Online for many reasons. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about the war. We'll go back to that and give you an update on what's been going on over the last weekend and today. So check that out later on. Okay, everybody, thanks. We will see you next time.
Thanks, dude.